From Turner Sports, welcome Peter Scott, along with Hill Holliday's Michael Grimes.
All right, thank you, Peter. How you doing?
How's everybody
doing? Well.
Hanging in there after? Does ever have the lunch kind of lull? Kind of just getting through that?
So we're going to talk about sports.
Yep.
But first though, I wanted to talk about leisure time. So hear me out here. We've been doing a lot of time jumping, a lot of talks about time jumping and Back to the Future, but I just wanted to go back to, let's say, 1840s and kind of an early example of what appointment viewing was back then. This is a sport called pedestrianism, and it's exactly what you'd expect it is. It's people literally watching other people walk briskly around a track, and it was very popular because there wasn't a lot of things to catch people's attention. They had leisure time because they worked in factories and didn't have to work sun up and sun down, and so they would go to the track and watch people walk. So that was kind of appointment viewing then. And there's a quote that I found, in case anyone's wondering kind of what happened to that sport. Well, the downfall was for a number of reasons, and kind of similar to the NFL right now, except for the safety bicycle part of it. But anyway, then we kind of fast forward to where we are now. You think of Super Bowl Media Day. So not even Super Bowl, but just Media Day, and just the tremendous amount of attention. People are enamored with sports. That's never going to change. But my first question for you is kind of how has the idea of appointment viewing changed in an on-demand world?
Well, I mean, I think sports is the tribe gatherer, right? Everybody here is maybe a Red Sox fan or a Patriots fan or a BC fan or somewhere else, you know, and I think sports has always been that tribal function. You know, we just rolled off playoffs with TBS in the National Championship League, and we had the Mets and the Cubs. I mean, what other great dream matchup, right? And I think, I don't know how many Mets fans are out here, but, you know, it's going to be the Mets. There you go, nice. It's going to be the Mets and the Royals, and I think I think sports just has that wonderful ability where people want to watch it live, and then any derivative after it, right? Whether it's FanDuels and the DraftKings doing analysis on how the sport people should pick their fantasy team and how you can make money. I think it's just we're very, very, very fortunate that in this disruption that all of us are here to try to explore and figure out, sports is a bastion that sort of is it's still getting disrupted, and we still have to figure out ways that we don't take that for granted. We have to figure out ways that we can look at new sports like we just announced 2 weeks ago. We still have to explore and look for more opportunities of I call them sort of digital campfires, and you know, figure out how we can leverage a lot of things we have at Turner and make it easier for people to either watch it live or to sort of, you know, watch it on demand on any device they have.
So that's an interesting point about kind of sports so far being somewhat isolated, you know, from a lot of the disruption that's happening. But you look at ESPN and kind of what's happening over there. There's, you know, tremendous shakeup, and it's at least I think partly due to this idea of, you know, changing consumption habits. And so you talked a little bit about eSports and some of the initiatives that, you know, Turner is undertaking. How can kind of these more traditional sports, traditional broadcasters embrace this disruption? That's what today is all about, this idea of the great disruption. How can they kind of put their arms around it?
I mean, it's just where the eyeballs are going. You know, I have lots of friends at ESPN. I think we're all in this space trying to figure out, whether it's us, NBC, or CBS, where the eyeballs are going. And I think if you don't have, just like inside your agencies, you don't have these cultural strategists, these guys that are sort of figuring out where the signals are and where you need to be participating. You know, eSports is a funny thing. I came running down the mountaintop in January after seeing a competition in Atlanta, and you could just squint out there and you could just feel like you were at a real sporting event. So I come running in the office in my crazy mad scientist way that they call me at Turner, and I said, we got to do this. We got to jump into this space somehow, some way. And I think to have people like me or people inside your own teams that are sort of helping you identify the culture trends and what signals are out there is so important to how to handle the disruption. Again, I think leagues are, you know, you saw NFL's announcement with Snapchat. We did something with Snapchat last year with March Madness where we allowed, it was very successful, where we went to college campuses and geo-targeted and all that content went inside Snapchat and got crazy amounts of numbers. But you have to be willing to take put your toe in the water and test it out. And I think if you don't, and at Turner there's this saying that I always share with people, that people say no because they don't know. So it's all our jobs as little evangelizers in this room to get people to move from saying no to maybe I'll try it.
And how is that met internally when you're kind of running from the mountaintop, being inspired, kind of seeing over the cusp and seeing something that's next?
Well, I have some of my colleagues here today, and probably someone will say, "Oh, there's Pete, he's being crazy again," or some, will roll their eyes. And sort of what I think it's your track record of showing sort of consistency, of sort of pushing the edge of the envelope. One of the big things we're looking at, as all you guys are here, is data. How do I take a brand that's in this room, come to Turner, and kind of like bring your own beer, bring your own data, and let's sit in a room and figure out if your users are combining with our users, and are there logical touch points between that. I think Linda Yarkino was just so wonderful this morning because she's trying to, like all of us, figure out the space, and making investments with Vox and making investments with BuzzFeed is smart, because they're trying to be, they're trying to basically inject sort of a little juice, a little adrenaline into a group that might be looking at things the old way. We bought Bleacher Report. I don't know how many people are Bleacher Report fans. Bleacher Report. We bought that company 3 years ago, and I think the strength on that company is we let them be who they were, but at the same time at Turner we leveraged our ability to promote them. So you saw even in the playoffs, Bleacher Report Team Stream logo. In March Madness, we told people to download the app and participate, and it's a great vehicle for personalization and data. And I think the key is how do you take the strengths that you already have and combine them with the knowledge that you're receiving through data, and combine the two. And I think that one purchase of Bleacher did so many great things for our company to get us to think differently, to get us to look at a perspective that otherwise maybe we wouldn't have done before.
And probably, I'm guessing, part of that acquisition as well, the earlier discussions of Vox and BuzzFeed kind of joining forces with NBC, is to get exposure to a new audience. We know when we had this chat earlier, when we talk about demographics in professional sports, and kind of the big four of the sports, the average age is somewhere maybe in the 40s, late 30s, early 40s. How can you kind of reconcile that with these massive investments in must-see events, college basketball, MLB playoffs, knowing that there is kind of this shift and this older, I say older in quotes, but older demographics are kind of the primary audience, and how can we hook those younger audiences?
Well, I mean, they always used to say that if your father played the sport, or if your mother played the sport, there's a good chance that you would play the sport, right? So if your mother was a flutist or guitar player, you'd learn how to play music. So I think the key is that as the generations get older, and those sports tend to get older, how do we figure out that we embrace that generation that's starting to have kids, so they can take them to a Braves game, a Knicks game, or a Mets game, and try to maintain that? I think the leagues are all trying to figure that out as well as us, is how do we make it younger? So maybe we can go to the NBA now and say, guess what, we have eSports, and now we're going to be focusing on a demo that's between roughly 16 to 24, and maybe we can figure out ways that we can get the NBA to participate in eSports in some interesting way. I think for us, it's always about sort of helping these brands expose. I don't know if, what is the golf, has anybody been to, what is it called? That golf range where you hit the balls into holes? Is that true golf? What's it called? Top Golf. Is that the greatest thing ever? How many people play Top Golf? It's like this, I'm serious, anywhere in the country, if you're traveling, go play this. So it's like a bowling alley for golf, but it's outside, and there are RFID tags inside the balls. And you hit the ball, and you hit targets, and it does score. You drink, you have fun, you watch TV, and it's basically sort of bringing people into golf in a different way that they never have. And I would highly recommend it to anybody, because it's a ball. It's a lot of fun, but that's a way that we can sort of start to push that a little bit in one way or another.
I think the example too, when you were talking about introducing that NBA audience to that eSports audience and vice versa, is that obviously kind of what you're hoping for that partnership as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we did in our initial research is that the eSports audience is competitive. I'd say they can be in some cases more competitive than a traditional athlete, and I think for us to be able to bring that competitiveness and show that there are synergies, right, between that competitive that competitive athlete in eSports and in traditional sports is going to be there. We also run NCAA.com as part of Turner, and so we're looking at, can we do tournaments, right? Can we build this sort of grassroots idea where you could have tournaments across the country, sort of build the best players in eSports and have sort of this finals top type opportunity? But you can't do that unless you put your toe in the water and make the investment to see where that can go, where it won't go.
One of the other things that I wanted to talk about, and we talked about this briefly a while back, is the idea of kind of how Turner is using the second screen. We know we've talked a bit about this in other segments today, but really using it in a way either to engage new audiences or really just ensure that you are going to encourage that appointment viewing. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the strides that you've made in the second screen experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're blessed, right? Like, again, we had the greatest success in the world with NCAA championship, right? So I'm sure everybody in this room on Thursday was either at their desktop or more importantly on a mobile device. So we look at that as the second screen of providing great content. With Yahoo yesterday, and them doing the football, I think that was a great opportunity for all of us to learn. I think for us to scale at that number, we get really big numbers for March Madness, as you can imagine. So that second screen sort of participation is important, and we're understanding and figuring out how to push the edge of the envelope. I think no one's really figured out. We were talking earlier about that one day where Brian talked about at CNN, where that one day where you will have questions coming from the internet, right? So that I thought it was brilliant. Hillary in the first debate was basically commenting on Twitter in real time as they were sort of talking, and being able to sort of show that participation is going to earn you value, whether that's exposure on air or whether that's exposure with winning money like FanDuel and DraftKings. So I think for us, we've experimented on a number of different levels. We have this product called TNT Overtime, where you can select multiple camera angles, and you can basically do a poll each half and figure out what player you want to watch. So I think it's taking that great piece of content you have and figuring out multiple ways that you can redistribute it and put it on a second stream. But I think you just have to keep trying. I think the route for us is maybe more on Twitter and Facebook, because people are already there, so I don't need them to download a new thing. So what can I put in that feed that can help them complement what they're watching on the bigger screen? I think we're all trying to figure out, and I think the more of us that do and sort of experiment with brands to see what kind of value we can do, the better off we are.
And to that point about kind of being where our audiences are spending time on platforms like Facebook and Twitter, how can you kind of engineer that consumption, that people will then want to tune in and watch something? Is it kind of creating a whole content strategy around a specific game? So there's advanced messaging, there's obviously during messaging, there's wrap-up messaging.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of thought given to that?
So you know what it is? I think it's really experimenting. Like this week we open the NBA, right? So tomorrow's opening night. So tonight we have, we decided to do a sort of marketing pitch on Twitch. So we're going to bring a bunch of our talent in. They're going to be on Twitch at 6 o'clock tonight, and they're going to play a game, and they're going to talk about the opening season. If someone said a year ago that you would spend money on Twitch to basically promote the opening night of the NBA, they probably look at it like, well, I don't get that. But we do get it because the demos match up. We did a food truck. Imagine that. We did a food truck with inside the NBA talent, Chuck, Kenny, Shaq, traveling on a food truck, not them physically, but the truck traveled through Instagram and Facebook and went to all these campuses around Silicon Valley. And the earned value that we got out of that, where people are taking pictures of the truck, they're showing Chuck, because the idea is we're doing this big opening night in San Francisco. But it's being able to sort of challenge and look at other places where you know the audiences are to create tune-in. I think we all look at it at Turner. You know, we're after the Super Bowl this year, we're basically going to own basketball between NCAA and NBA basketball. And so how do we tell the world? This is the first year, by the way, that the championship game is going to be on TBS on Monday night, not CBS. So how do we tell the whole world? You know, we look at guys like Whistle, who do such an effective way with their influencer model. Could we work with them to basically enhance some of our content ideas? So you really have to sort of look at multiple places where you sort of treat it like, we have this sort of philosophy where you treat it like a movie premiere. How many movies are out there that if they don't, think of Star Wars. Think how much stuff has been going on with Star Wars. I'm a geek. I'm so psyched to see it. But they're in Target. They're solely
in the halftime of Monday Night Football
exactly.
last week. Yeah.
So that everybody's talking about it, even though the movie doesn't come out to December.
Right.
So what's the strategy for us to basically sort of go, okay, 3 months ahead of time, how do we get everybody to know that we're going to have March Madness on Monday night on TBS? And so I think we're looking at food trucks, we're looking at Twitch, we're looking at all these opportunities, just like brands in this room, right, are trying to experiment and look for places to put their brand.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, people watch live sports because I feel like they want to see history being made. They want to see something happen in real time that's going to be unforgettable. Is there a way to kind of reinforce that in your messaging, or in the way that you queue up the programming, or just really kind of emphasize the fact that, versus eSports, which is something that you can watch, it doesn't necessarily have to be live, you can watch replays of it, but kind of that magic of seeing history happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was funny, the token thing that we saw earlier, right? It was all, I mean, there was probably 3 sound bites about the NFL, right? The guy's like, oh man, I gotta put one more, I gotta see this game. And I think the live aspect allows us that fortitude for that, but I don't think we can just rest on our laurels that that's always gonna be the case. So I think for us, it's real-time highlights, right? We did the first package with Twitter 2 years ago on selling real-time highlights on March Madness. That immediacy, a dunk, a three-point play, whatever it may be, how do you get it out to the masses on as many different screens as possible? Right now, we're looking into personalization. So if someone in this room identifies themselves as a Duke or UCLA fan or a Boston College fan, how can I deliver to that person a playlist of just BC highlights or of Duke highlights? So it's different variations of basically figuring out, don't rest on your laurels, that live is going to drive the bus forever. How do you extend that across multiple platforms, whether that be analog in a food truck, or whether that be Twitch tonight, or whether that be personal highlights on Facebook or Twitter? Embrace it as much as you can. But I think all of the people in this room, you've gotten to where you've been, and where you're going is because you've been sort of evangelizers or crusades in whatever you do. So I can't tell you how important it is to keep that endurance. It's very, very difficult in our traditional business to give up, right? Like, oh man, this guy doesn't know anything about Snapchat, but he's got to be on it. And you get frustrated with that. But I think you just have to figure out how you hit singles and how you can start to show that there's relationships between the consumption of content across multiple devices and on multiple platforms.
And the personalization idea, I think, it's great. That's obviously really exciting territory. I think we need to wrap up, so I just wanted to ask you, what else are you kind of excited about? You've said you're not going to rest on your laurels. You know that you have a great product, but you need to continue to innovate. You've been at the forefront of that. What are some big bets or things that you're excited about?
I mean, I'm just excited. We were talked about in the back, and everybody thinks cut the cord is such a bad thing. And what we sort of talked about, I'm like, it's a great thing, right? It allows people, it's such a negative connotation that this traditional model is getting sort of marginalized. And so what I look at is a cut the cord sort of invigorating, right? It's basically allowing people to get to their content as many different places as they can. And I'm excited to be part of brands that I know have huge tribes, huge digital campfires, and that I can figure out ways to get that content to them. And I think it's for everybody in this room too, right? You have great brands that you represent, and figuring out ways to make that brand comfortable with what you're doing is, I think, an exciting time to be alive. But I mean, I wish we could all just walk away and don't think that cut the cord is a bad thing. I don't think it is a bad thing. I'm really confident that we can look at opportunities to get content as many places as we can. So I'm just excited really to be alive in this time when, it's an amazing sort of commoditization of technology has allowed people to do so many wonderful things.
Great. Thanks so much for your time, Peter. This is wonderful. Appreciate it.